What's up, YouTube? Kind of a bigger update here. This is the, the donor. You can see something missing there. But the interior is stacked with stuff. If we go over here, actually got the motor and transmission in. Motor and transmission are in. Transmission, the slave cylinder and clutch is hooked up. I still need to bleed that a little bit more, but that's all hooked up. Shifter's hooked up. Yeah, looking pretty good. And the rear end's all done. I tried to be all done underneath the car today, so that included the drive shaft, putting that in, and obviously putting in the engine and transmission, but also I wanted to make sure that I was just done underneath the car because I've been on my back quite a bit. It's starting to get a little bit sore. So obviously the cross member went in as well. First I had to pull the motor and the transmission, and then once I did, I got the cross member out and quickly moved it over and then put the engine and transmission in as well. Let's see. I'll go over how to do that, but that's the underneath of the car. So in terms of getting the engine and transmission in one go, would I recommend it? Yes-ish. It definitely makes the job easier. Obviously, separating the motor from the transmission and then pulling them out piece by piece. I mean, you're going to have to pull the motor out from the top and the transmission out from the bottom. It's not fun. But pulling them together, it's very tight. You need just the right angle. I kind of lucked out. And you're going to touch up your radiator support just a little bit. You can see I was lucky. I just kind of nicked mine a little bit. I don't really care at all. I mean, as long as it went in, I'm not concerned with that. I did really nick up the plastic dip here. That was actually the engine hoist. That had nothing to do with the install, but I mean, it's plastic dip, so I don't care about my paint really. All I have to do is just spray that over, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, so getting the transmission, it was very tight because you can see how close the transmission is to the kind of tunnel there, and you got to kind of come in at this angle, like about like this, and then come in. But the issue being, if you come in too steep, then you won't be able to pull back out. But if you don't come in steep enough, then you're not going to be able to fit the header over the oil pan over this radiator support. So it's got to be at like an angle kind of like that. And again, when you're going in, it's going to be go in, hit, tilt down, go in, hit, tilt down, go in, hit, tilt down. And it's definitely really tedious, but it probably took me to pull out was quicker. To pull out the motor from the WRX took me probably about half an hour. To put it in probably took me about an hour. Just because I was going back and forth. But I mean, for, an hour and a half's worth of time, being really tedious about it, that an hour and a half as opposed to like to pull the motor and pull the transmission out and then put them back together. Oh man, that's like easily 5 hours worth of work. So, like probably more depending on how good you are at it. Yeah, I just wanted to save some time there and get off my back, so that helped me quite a bit. So the next steps are the wiring. As you can see, I started a little bit of that. So this is in, put all the wires in there. So the battery's ready to be hooked up. Starter is hooked up along with that ground. The engine plugs are all hooked up. These plugs are for the washer pump. Not concerned with that, but they are the same plugs if I wanted to use my same washer. Obviously, this is the positive terminal, negative terminal. And then we start going this way, and this is where I haven't plugged in stuff yet. So yellow is the airbag sensor, so I need to put that on the bumper. This will be lights. That would be, for the WRX, that would be the corner light, if you will. Headlight. And then we have the radiator fan light, our radiator fan. And radiator fan one over here. Various grounds. Then we have the headlight. Another, excuse me, I believe this is the bottom fog light. I'm not sure. I'll have to look. And then this would be the ABS sensor plug, or the ABS module plug. Power steering pump's just laying there. And then I have various plugs over here for the alternator. And then the AC compressor. There's some plugs up here as well. These would be for boost control and other parts of engine management. So not actually too many. Like, again, the wiring, the only rewiring I'm going to have to do is for the front lights. So, I mean, to get the motor started, I don't need to do that obviously at all. But what I'll be doing is I'll actually be making harnesses. So instead of cutting and fraying into another one, I'll cut off the WRX harness and cut off the old headlight harness, and I'll kind of make an adapter to where it can plug right in. So that's my plan for the doors and for the lights as well. In terms of the interior wiring, let's see where we're at here. I've got all this wired underneath, with the exception of this would be the door. As you can see, there's a shit ton of pins on that. That's probably the hardest part, is the door, because you have door locks, windows, speakers. There's tweeters that are in the WRX as well, and then you also have the alarm system needs to go through all that. So yeah, that is not too fun. And then all this other wiring is pretty generic. So I mean, airbag stuff. I don't know. Oh, this one goes to the. These are all sensors for the doors. Sorry. Tells you when the door's shut. This I'm not sure. Maybe the back door. I'll have to look at that. And then we got more fuel and engine management related over there. So that's fuel pump and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to get the wiring done tomorrow. When I say the wiring done, I mean everything hooked up. In terms of just being able to start the engine. I won't start it tomorrow. I still have to replace all the fluids. So I'm going to have to replace the oil, the engine oil, transmission oil, all of it leaked out. Because that's the one thing, when you're moving the engine and transmission together, I told you it has to be a steep angle, right? So all of that transmission fluid just comes out where the drive shaft would go. I mean, it started pouring out. I wasn't prepared for it. I had to run and get a drip pan, but it dripped everywhere. But yeah, so transmission fluid and then differential fluid. And the transmission fluid, differential fluid should be, obviously this should be in the engine oil. I want those to be the last things where I'm kind of on my back. Again, my back's really sore. I'd rather hunch over at this point as opposed to lay down on my back. So, that's that. I don't know. I don't know if you noticed this. There's kind of a mark on my forehead. That's not like dirt or anything like that. That's actually from a hammer. And I'll say when I screw up, I've screwed up quite a bit. I was actually using a hammer to pry, this specific hammer, as a matter of fact, to pry the rear end link out of the lateral arm. It was stuck, and I was using the claw of it, and I got it, but when it came loose, it kind of flung the hammer. I lost control of it and just literally popped myself in the forehead with it. And I was convinced it was going to be a trip to the hospital, but it just kind of swelled up a little bit. I had to ice it, and so yeah, watch out for hammers. Okay, well, the other thing that I still have to do is, I got the cross member in, obviously, but I just have to put the hubs on. That's not a big deal with the control arms. When you're using, this is actually the GC or GF control arm. When you're using that, you have to use shims on this part right here, because the cross member, instead of being tight like this, it's actually a little bit looser. So you need to compensate for that with some washers. So I'll just go to Home Depot and get some washers for now. But yeah, she's looking great. This is a huge step. Everything else is kind of tedious and minor from here on out. Nothing really big. felt really good to get that in. That's like a huge burden lifted right there. Can almost get rid of that little thing too, because I've just been throwing the trash inside of it. So, I mean, it's pretty much done. Yeah. I'm keeping it just until I'm done, just so I can make sure that I don't need anything else. I'll definitely probably need this. And that, and maybe some brake lines. Yeah, this car was much more rusted out than I'd liked. And I got everything off. It just, some things I needed to let sit. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but you can see this brake line kind of just like stops there. It should have a fitting on the end. I actually had to cut it. I said, fuck it, I don't need it. So I just cut it. That way I could get a socket on the fitting, because it was so rusted. I couldn't do anything with a wrench. With like an open end, it just was stripping the shit out of it. So I had to do it that way. Okay, so that's a good way to end it, I guess. Don't deal with rusted out cars. Avoid rust if you can. This one shouldn't have been rusty. It was from Washington, but somehow there was a little bit. Not a lot, but my 97 is much cleaner in terms of, like, I've never had an issue with a bolt. Nothing's rusted. Everything comes out easily. Like, never had an issue with a bolt. But okay, that's it.